بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. أما بعد, أحبتي في الله, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to our study of the purification of Tawheed by Imam As-San'ani, rahmatullahi alayhi, rahmatin wasiya. During the course of this lesson, we'll talk a little bit about grave worship. And that is a core theme of this treatise that Imam As-San'ani was rejecting and refuting and repudiating the widespread grave worshipping that had become prevalent throughout the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam during his lifetime. And he witnessed that primarily in places like Yemen, but it was well known, and the news of it and what was going on and taking place was widespread. So he says, from all that is preceded, meaning all of those other lessons we talked about, the various types of shirk, and that we have to purify our worship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that supplicating to anyone or anything other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is shirk. He says, from all that which has preceded, you have learnt that whoever believes that a tree, a rock, a grave, an angel, a jinn, a dead person, or a living person can bring about benefit or harm, or bring one closer to Allah, or intercede with him on his behalf to fulfill a worldly need of this through the mere act of intercession, and tawassul to Allah, the exalted is He, except what has been mentioned in the hadith, which itself requires research concerning our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then he has committed shirk with Allah and has taken to an unlawful belief, a belief such as that held by the polytheists concerning their idols. So here Imam As-San'ani is rejecting any and all forms of shirk, that you cannot, it doesn't matter the status of the creation, but supplicating to anyone and depending upon anyone and doing any act of worship to anyone other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a violation of Islamic monotheism. And this is very important for us for a particularly important and profound ibadah. Sheikh Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab rahmatullahi alayhi rahmatin wasiya, he said, أعظم ما أمر الله به التوحيد وأعظم ما نهى عنه الشرك. He said the greatest thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded is tawheed, is Islamic monotheism. And the most severest of sins, or most egregious things Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prohibited is shirk, is polytheism. Now, he says, this is more so the case of the one who consecrates his wealth or children to a dead or living person, or requests a need from a dead person that should only be asked of from Allah, such as granting health to a sick person, or the return of a lost item, or the fruition of a desire. For all of this is the same same shirk that was committed by the idol worshippers. The same applies to consecrating wealth to the dead and the like, sacrificing at a grave, seeking to tawassul through the dead, and requesting one's need from him. These are the self-same deeds done in the time of Jahiliyyah by the people to their statues and idols that are being done by the grave worshippers to their awliya, graves and shrines. So you can see that the similarities there, and that was one of the reasons why especially the dawah of Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab rahmatullahi alayhi was so controversial, because his dawah was much far further reaching than Imam As-San'ani's. However, it was controversial because so many people who associate themselves with Islam had returned to polytheistic beliefs. Now, the fact that the names are different does not alter the reality. So here he's making an ishara, he's pointing out to the fact that the reality of something is in its substance, not in its claim or its name. Because you claim that something is not shirk anymore does not make it not shirk, and does not make it tawheed. If you say something is tawheed, your claim doesn't make it tawheed, but rather the belief or the action, or the saying. It has to be commensurate with the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the fact that the names are different does not alter the reality. Someone who drinks alcohol, calling it water, has not changed the reality of what he has done. He has drunk alcohol, and his punishment is the punishment of the one who has drunk alcohol. In fact, his punishment could well be increased in severity because of his deception and lie. Numerous ahadith establish the fact that there would arise a people who would drink alcohol, calling it by names other than its true name. He, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, spoke the truth. A group of sinners have appeared who drink alcohol, calling it nabidh. And I believe this is from raisins. So they said, hey, this isn't like the alcohol in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. This is something fermented, a fermented drink that we made out of raisins. And Allah knows best. But ala kulli hal, regardless of whether the people called it a new name, it is still alcohol, still khamr, it still intoxicates. The first to adorn that which incurred the anger of Allah and his disobedience with alluring titles was Iblis. May Allah curse him. For he said to the father of man, Adam alayhi salatu wasalam, Ya Adam, hal adullaka ala shajaratin al-khuldi wal mulkin la yubla. O Adam, shall I show you the way to the tree of everlasting life and to a kingdom which will never fade away? Here he called the tree that Allah forbade Adam from even approaching the tree of everlasting life. So Iblis gave it a new name, thinking he could deceive Adam alayhi salatu wasalam, in order to attract him to it and encourage him to approach it, deceitfully giving it this concocted name. In the same way, his brothers, those who follow him blindly, call hashish the morsel of euphoria. So during the time, in previous time, they called hashish, they gave it different names in order to make it seem like it's not an intoxicant. It's not getting you high. It's rather the morsel, like you're getting a taste of euphoria, of pure bliss and everlasting greatness and great feeling. In the same way, the oppressors who misappropriate the wealth of Allah's bondsmen call their spoils discipline. Adab. Discipline for killing, discipline for stealing, discipline for accusation, discipline for weighing and measuring, distorting the word oppression to discipline. Some of this misappropriated wealth acquires the titles nafa'a and sayaqa. The actual title for all of this with Allah is oppression and transgression, as is clear to anyone who has savored the aroma of the book and the sunnah. The precedent for all of this lies with Iblis and his calling the prohibited tree the tree of everlasting life. So Imam San'ani is giving many examples that he witnessed and that had become prevalent in history, in Islamic history, of ways people had changed terminologies in order to entice people to sinfulness and wickedness or justify evil. He said the same applies to calling a grave a shrine, mashhad, and the resident of the grave whom they hold belief in to be a wali. These names do not change the reality of its being an idol and statue because they treat it in the same way that the polytheists treated their idols. These people circumambulate the residents of the grave as the pilgrim circumambulates Allah's sanctified house. They wipe the graves as they would wipe the corners of the house. They address the deceased with words of disbelief, such as, "It is upon Allah and upon you." And they cry out to them in times of hardship and the likes. Imam San'ani is bringing up a lot of very important points there, that showing how the people, they did these acts of worship, but they did not refer to it as worship. They gave it new names, new terminologies, and considered it as a way to just beautify worship or various other deceptive ways of thinking or deceptive ideologies or deceptive terminologies.